You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Super excited to introduce a friend this episode. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. And before I introduce the guest today, as in the last three episodes, I just want to give another shout out to our Ukrainian army. To those that don't know, I'm originally from Ukraine and a very proud Ukrainian. It's a horrible situation that's happening there with the hands of the murderer Putin and accompanied by all the Russian people and thinking that this is a good thing for their country. But it looks like we're kicking their ass, so I'm excited to see us save the world from this tyrant. With that, I'm excited to introduce our guest today. It's Clint Latham. Clint is a founder of Lucca Veterinary Data Security. He has over 15 years of experience in networking, software development, and cybersecurity. He graduated from Purdue Law School in 2015 and started taking the challenges of technology in the veterinary hospital in 2016. Clint's goal is to help veterinarians realize the value of their data and help them take steps to protect it, so that they can focus on what is most important: quality care of our four-legged family members. Clint, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Yeah, definitely. Although, I should probably rectify that because I've really gotten into bird photography lately. And so, like birds, if like maybe birds, they only have two legs, right? So four, I'm kind of excluding this whole, and cockatoos, right? That's like a bird. So I'm excluding this whole this whole subset of pets.
Well, also, speaking of Luca, isn't Luca
She's
not a
only three
four-legged
legs. This is
dog?
true.
So tell us
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine in Vale, she works with this nonprofit that's based out of Texas, and it's a former Navy SEAL, and he basically trains Belgian Malinois to be like these high level security dogs for really high profile people. So, anyways, used to have Yorkies. Unfortunately, lost them, and she sent me this article about this Yorkie. There's actually parachuting like into World War II. They were saying these Yorkies, and she's like, "Oh, they're not just purse dogs." But there was this other story about this dog, Lucca. It was like at the same time I was creating the company. And basically, Lucca's job was to lead the Marines through Afghanistan and Iraq into new territory or new areas that they were going in. And her job was to sniff out IEDs. She had, on her last tour of duty, she had sniffed out an IED. The Marines came up, they started disarming it. So she did what she did best, and she charged ahead to find another one. She did find another one, but unfortunately, before the Marines could get there to disarm it, it went off. And she took the brunt of the impact, and she ended up losing one limb. She got airlifted out by the Veterinary Corps of Engineers, and she survived, and then she was decommissioned. The amazing thing is that she never lost a soldier. So any patrol that she was on, she never lost a soldier. And as I thought about the technology landscape and as I was building this company, it just really gave me something to emulate. Like, not only do I have an amazing relationship with my dogs and our new dog Odin, there's this amazing human animal bond, but also for our company to emulate Lucca and to sniff out these threats and these attacks that most veterinarians don't know are there, and to be there to take the brunt of that attack should something happen to help the underlying hospital. So I just thought there's no better way to name and pay homage to a company than an amazing service animal.
That's an awesome story. So, but I think that the moral of the story is that you are out there helping veterinarians to help pets, regardless of the number of limbs they have.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, to circle back. Yeah.
I can't not ask you. So Yorkies paratrooping into the Second World War.
Yeah.
I mean, come on,
Pretty
what's
amazing,
going on
right?
there?
Yeah.
What did they do?
Well, because they were so small, and basically they could drop them in, and they could get in these little like foxholes, and they could shuffle through and deliver messages. And because like they were originally bred to like dig out rats and stuff, they would keep all the rodents out of these like foxholes and stuff.
Okay, that's cool. So let's switch to what you do today. So you help hospitals with the cybersecurity and many IT solutions, and so cybersecurity is something that you commonly see in the movies and hear about it in some foreign countries, and or as we attacked the Russian and Belarusian government websites recently with 185,000 developers all around the world, which was pleasant participation. What is the cybersecurity threat, and when is it real for our industry, not on TV?
Oh yeah, great question. I think there's really four barriers that we have to overcome as an industry. The first one is this mindset that our IT guy has us covered. Especially as we like go into new hospitals or start working with them. It's like, I guess the easiest way for me to say this is the White House issued a letter in June of 2020 saying all small to medium sized businesses, here are the 5 things you need to do to protect yourself against cybercrime. Number 4 was check your IT team's work. So this isn't just like a veterinary industry problem, but it's really unique in the veterinary industry because we have so many independent hospitals where it's like their cousin or their nephew or somebody was decent with computers and donated them this server, and they've got us covered until it's too late, right? So I think that's one big problem. The other thing is that most people think, why, nobody wants Fluffy's medical records, and I think that's just a great misunderstanding of how cyber attacks work. Cyber attacks work like a waterfall or a river. It looks for the path of least resistance, and it doesn't care what business you're in. And in the veterinary industry, we have aging networking equipment. We generally don't take it seriously. We aren't really focusing on it. We don't have anybody in the hospital that's really good at it. If we have a traditional style MSP, we look at how expensive that stuff can be. And so we kind of write it off as too heavy of an expense. And so basically puts us at a major risk. And also because we don't think about it. The other thing is we're insanely empathetic. I don't think this is something we need to change, but we generally trust people in this industry. Most doctors are willing to trust people and have this really great quality, which then makes it really easy for a professional to take advantage of them. I mean, just last year we had a hospital that got extorted $40,000 wired out of their bank account because they thought they were talking with a vendor, and they weren't really talking with a vendor. They were talking with a hacker. And again, because we don't have basic protections in place, it just puts us at a major risk because it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be overly expensive. And there's potential to actually help us save some money, even from a technology standpoint. But we just have to take it serious first, and then we can kind of implement those solutions.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Clinton. I mean, we've talked about this stuff like in depth because I come from a IT and IT security background as well. Had an MSP before I got into the veterinary world, and it's simple stuff that really blows my mind. Like literally just last week, I got a text from 2 people in my company at the same time. Hey, what are you doing? I was like, I'm driving or whatever I was doing, and they're like, did you just ask me to like buy some Apple gift cards? And I was like, no, I didn't ask you to buy some Apple gift cards, but I'm super excited to say that you did the right thing. You called me, you reached out to me live. And I think that, this is, as we're on this topic and just kind of like how real it is and how pervasive it is, one tip is if tell your employees, for God's sakes, if they get asked to do something that's outside your character, to call you. Like this is one of the simplest and easiest things that you can implement inside an organization. And with that kind of tip of like, if somebody says, can you send me this wire transfer, or can you buy these Apple gift cards and put them in the mail, or whatever the stupid request is, get your staff get in the habit of being okay to interrupt you, being happy to do it because it will save you a ton of money. But I'd love to talk about, what are the simple things that people can do to protect themselves, or like what can we teach people on this podcast in 15 minutes today so that they don't get extorted for 50 or 100 or $200,000, which are all numbers that have happened to people that I know in this industry and in other industries. And it's so easy and it's so fast. Currency is all digital now, and it's just a couple of buttons you got to press, and then all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of dollars can disappear. So help our listeners by giving a little bit of a quick education on what they can do to protect themselves.
Yeah, so all the stuff that I'll cover here quickly, and I'll just touch on them point by point to make things faster. But you can get a free ebook from our website. So if you go to www.lucca.vet, there's a free ebook called 5 Simple Steps to Protect Your Practice or your hospital, and it actually goes more in depth into these things and some of the free tools that I'll mention that you can use. So 100% free to use. So please go take advantage of that. The first one I would say is just better password management, or IAM control, right? Identity access management. I mean, most hospitals, based on what your practice management system is, I can probably walk in and tell you what your passwords are and know where you got your machines. And if I know where you got your machines, I can tell you what your passwords are. Sometimes we'll do like physical vulnerability assessments where we'll come into a new hospital. We don't tell the reception staff what we're doing. I just put my elbows on the counter and I lean over. I can see all the bank account information. I can see all the passwords on sticky notes. I mean, I can gather a shit ton of information just by saying like, hey, can you go get the practice manager for me? I'm with X and X company. And in that matter of time, I mean, with my phone, I can get so much valuable data. And I think if we look at technology from how it's been adopted. We never really, when websites and stuff were created, we never really thought about the idea of somebody trying to take advantage of that, right? So the username password combination was kind of a band-aid approach to help us secure this stuff in some way. And we're trying to move into more like the iPhone, it uses Face ID and all this other stuff to get more secure. But I think if we can just implement simple password managers that create really complex passwords that we can share with our staff that autofills it for them, it shows that the more complicated our password is, we don't have to change it, right? So there used to be this adage, we need to change it every 90 days. Actually, the more complicated our password is, the less likely we'll have to change it. And we don't necessarily need to change it unless there's a notification of a breach. So implementing a simple password manager can go a long ways. And in the ebook, there's a free one. There's a great open source one called Bitwarden that you can leverage yourself. You can actually install it on your own server and push it out. You can use LastPass, 1Password. There's some great ones that you can use. The second thing I would say is just update, update, and update again. A great example is there's this hacking conference every year called Pwn It and You Own It, and they bring some of the best minds in the like ethical hacking space into a hotel. They connect a brand new Microsoft Surface laptop and a brand new MacBook, and they're completely security patched. No additional security tools, just 100% updated. And the goal for these hackers is to develop a website that the judges just simply visit the web page and they have to get complete control over the machine. And I can tell you right now, every year they give away the prize money, and every year they give away the computers because somebody does it. And these are computers that are 100% patched. They have all the latest security updates. And so imagine what they can do with your Windows 7 machine, that your X-ray machine that's sitting in that back room because you don't want to invest $3,000 to get a new one from IDEX or Fovea or whoever, that has over 11,000 known vulnerabilities that we could look up right now.
I want to double down on that like super duper hard. If you've got old shitty hardware in your practice, don't do that to yourself. Buy new hardware. Like, you're not getting security patches if you've got a Windows 7 machine. So if you've got those things sitting in your practice, you are putting your entire business at risk, and you probably don't even know it.
Exactly. Yeah, and this also goes for iPhones, IoT devices. Just if there's an update, I know it's a pain in the butt, but make sure they're updated. In the ebook, we also give some tips on how you can automate those things after hours so that they're not such an inconvenience. But again, making sure everything is really up to date is insanely crucial.
We'll make sure the ebook link is in the show notes so people can find it super easy.
Awesome. The third thing I would say is there's some great free tools. If you're not using a password manager, there's a website called haveibeenpwned.com. It's PWNED, haveibeenpwned.com. And you can enter your email address, your passwords, any passwords in there, and it will tell you if it's been a part of any known exposed data breaches, and if those passwords are part of, available on the dark web, just basically to download for free. And you should immediately update those accounts. If you're not using a password manager that scans this stuff every day and looks for any known breaches, then I would do it probably at least once a quarter. Super easy. It will take you about 30 seconds. There's another great website called Virustotal.com. This is a really great website because what we've seen in the industry is we've seen the industry go from like basically being caught in the shrapnel of being part of healthcare to now dedicated targeted attacks to the vet industry. And what we've seen is a lot of fake resumes coming through because however many hospitals are listening to this, you could probably raise your hand if you're hiring, and I would assume it's probably 90% of the people listening. The hacking industry has realized that this is a vulnerability, and we see a bunch of fake resumes come through. And so basically they'll send a resume like, hey, associate doctor applying for this job. The practice manager double clicks that document, boom, it actually wasn't a resume, and they get hit. So with Virustotal, like if you're using Gmail or if you're using Outlook, you can just drag, and you don't even have to download the file. You just drag and drop it into Virustotal. It'll scan that file. And generally I say if there's like 2 or 3 engines that find something malicious about it, then I'd be reaching out and trying to get another copy. But again, it takes about 30 seconds and it'll save you $100,000, right? Because most ransomware requests are going to be in that $100,000 to $250,000 range. And again, it's a free tool. The other thing that's great about Virustotal is they have a free URL scanner. So if you get a weird link and you're like, I think, like you were talking about like the whole Apple gift card thing, if they were to get an email that says like, hey, I'm Shawn Wilkie, your boss, and I want you to do this, go to this link, you can copy that link, dump it into Virustotal as well. It'll scan that web page, let you know if there's anything malicious going on there. One caveat, if it's a general, just like phishing, they're just trying to get your credentials, it's not going to protect you, right? Because if you give them the password, there's nothing malicious that site's trying to do. You're giving them the information freely. So always think twice about websites where they're asking you to enter a username and password. But if there's something that would download onto your computer, or something like that, Virustotal should flag it.
So this is the stuff that I could do, but
Mhm.
I have that nephew that knows everything, and I don't have any doubt. So what can listeners practically do? Because it sounds like all you're listing here. I'm like, oh, I should do that because I'm the one in our company not using one password.
Yeah.
But then, if I'm certain that my nephew knows how to run this stuff because he went to college
Mhm.
about something like that, I don't know what it was about, but I trust him. What can clinic or the hospital do to be like, hey, can I just check if everything he's doing is right? Do you have a service that you provide?
Yeah.
How much it costs to just basically like, hey, can you scan my hospital? Are we secure? So is that something you guys do?
Yeah, definitely. Depending upon the size of the hospital, the cost varies, right? Like if you have 6 workstations and no server, the cost is quite a bit cheaper. But for the average hospital, it's about $2,800. And we do a complete cybersecurity audit. We also loop in the cybersecurity. I always get it. It's CISA, Cybersecurity Information Security Agency. We also then at the same time submit a request with them, and then they re-audit us. So we audit you, and then they'll re-audit our work at the same time to make sure that we don't find any gaps, right? Because a lot of times we have the blinders on, and we also need to make sure what we're doing is the best. So, and it generally doesn't interrupt business workflow. So there's nothing that we're not going to take the hospital down. We're not going to do any like black hat hacking where we're actually trying to take you down. We're just looking for the risks and ways that we could get in if we wanted to do these things. So it doesn't interrupt business. It should only take the practice manager, or hospital administrator or the owner, maybe a couple hours of their time to kind of be involved once we get our initial tool sets running. And usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks to complete. And then you kind of get this entire run book. And then we also create a disaster recovery plan. So based on the current data sets that you have, what your current backup strategy is based on with your nephew, it gives you a real world idea of what your RPO and RTO are. So those are recovery point objective and recovery time objectives. So assuming everything goes perfectly, how quick can you actually get back up and running to really give you an insight like, okay, we need to make some changes here, or no, we're in a good position.
So, and yeah, I remember last time we were, I don't remember when we were chatting, maybe another interview, but we were talking about the risks. So you identify a couple of risks. They get your password, they get you this. And I'm thinking, well, my password from my Gmail, well, everybody in my company has my email password, and which is again, probably something that is not secure. But what's next, right? What is they going to do? So tell us about the story. You told me that, where they limited the threat down to, so where they steal your data, as far as I understand, this is what can happen if they get access. And then basically make your hospital freeze and then have all of your contact information. And then there's a certain cap, but they can go pretty high up to
Mhm.
like 500 or something. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what does that show threat so it's palpable? Explain what can happen.
Yeah, so ransomware is the biggest threat. And there's a couple things. And I think there's a couple ways that this ties together. And that sometimes people also think, like, hey, well, I'm in the cloud, so it doesn't matter. And actually, there's a major problem in the vet industry, which we're trying to rectify with a lot of these good practice management systems, is there isn't basic security protections in a lot of these cloud solutions, right? So what we'll see is they get access to that email account. From that email account, they set up all these rules so they can send communication on your behalf. It looks like it's you. It looks legit. They watch how you communicate. They look for certain phrases and things that you'll say that make you unique. And they'll use that language to then get access to, say, a cloud practice management system. From there, they download your entire customer data set. They then also start downloading a bunch of old invoices, right? So, Fluffy just came in for this $800 dental because she was a Yorkie with terrible teeth and had to have like 8 teeth pulled. Then they start sending emails to all of your customers from your account, and you have no idea, saying like, hey, we tried to charge your credit card that day, but our machines were down, so can you pay this invoice? Like, it just didn't go through. Here's a link. And so a lot of customers won't think twice, right? Because they have a great relationship with their veterinarian. They didn't bother to check their credit card to make sure it actually went through. They just assume, hey, it's coming from our vet, this must be legit, and they'll start paying it, and it's actually going somewhere else. And then you're left to pick up all the pieces. And then basically what they'll do is then they'll blackmail you, and they'll say, hey, if you don't give us X amount of dollars, we're going to release your entire customer data set to basically the World Wide Web, right? And we're going to sell it. The other thing that they'll do is a lot of times from your email account, we see this a lot. And we've seen a lot of like social media influencing doctors come to us because their social media accounts get compromised and taken over, and they want $10,000, $20,000 to give them the accounts back. But what they'll do is they'll go onto your social media accounts. We've actually even seen a doctor ready to sign the deal with a consolidator that was buying them out. He's ready to retire. He's been working 40 years to build this hospital. Once they got access to his social media account, they saw he had some like questionably ethical personal things going on. So business was great, but in his personal life, there was some questionable things happening, and I'll kind of leave those details out just for the sake of privacy.
So boring, Clint. That's boring. We want the details. Me and Ivan
as somebody who spent a lot of money to go to law school, I also don't want to deal with the legal ramifications of it. But basically, they then reached out to the consolidator because they saw that they were selling, and they're like, "Hey, just to let you know, we've got access to all the data. We're going to release all this stuff to all of their customers, saying, hey, this is what this doctor's been doing," basically destroying the reputation of this hospital unless you give us $500,000. And of course, at that point, the consolidator is like, we can't deal with the potential ramifications of this in trying to basically pick up the pieces. We're out. We can't buy this. Like, there's too much risk here. Again, because some basic protections weren't put in place.
So, Shawn, all your stuff on social media.
I was thinking about you, man. I was thinking about. I'm not on social media.
Yeah,
I'm not the guy that gives access to all of his social media accounts to all of his employees. That's you.
I've been telling you that chocolate and whiskey together doesn't bring you anywhere well. So, yeah.
That's some of it. And then the other side would be just general ransomware to the overall server. One thing that people don't realize is they think that like ransomware, when it hits, it just like locks out your files. It locks everything. Your computer doesn't function. Like, it does not work. So it's not like you can even go to a web browser. The entire computer has been locked down. And the problem is that most veterinarians, at that point, we had a hospital, an emergency center in New Jersey that's been hit 4 times. And we're like, hey, and again, they have like an actual IT person that they pay a decent amount of money to. And I don't know if it's just too painful to cut ties with that person because they've been doing business with them for so long, but like, this is what you need to do. Like, if you don't want to go through this again, and they just kind of rolled with it, right? Like, they just, like, it's mind boggling to me. But again, they were repeat targets because the first time they thought their IT guy had them covered, they weren't. They couldn't, the backups they thought they had were no good. And so they paid the ransom. Once you pay the ransom, you actually become a direct target.
You're like a billboard at that point.
Exactly. And your name gets around and they're like, hey, this hospital will pay. They don't have protections, and we see it all the time. And it's just so unfortunate because there's some basic things you can do. You can spend $150 a month. Like, if you have a server, $150 a month, at least your data will be ransomware proof, right? And it can go from a major headache to a minor inconvenience.
Okay, well, if this didn't give you sweats and you don't want to call Clint right away, then I don't know what will. So, Clint, where do we find you on the web? And we'll go to our last 2 questions.
Yeah, so you can find us at www.lucca.vet, like veterinarian. So it's lucca.vet. I'm actually working on a new website. We should actually hopefully have that live by May. So that's cool. So if you go there now, you go to the old site, but you can get the free ebook. You can download that for free. The only other social media platform I'm on right now is LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We share our new articles every Monday about things that are going on in the vet space. Also try to share simple tips that you can take to help you kind of always adapt to the changing landscape that is cybersecurity.
That's awesome. Well, at the end, we asked 2 questions. So question number 1, is there a book, a TED Talk, or a video that you would recommend to our listeners?
I heard there's an ebook.
Yeah, our ebook. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, if you're really interested, and I think as somebody who's also very interested in data privacy, Edward Snowden's book, Permanent Record, is insanely eye-opening, basically on the state of how much information is really out there about you and what are some things that we can start to think about to kind of get our lives back in some regard. Really, really powerful book. I think it's really, really eye-opening. Definitely something you should check out.
And then the last question, is there another innovator in the vet space that you think we should have on the show?
Yeah. Have you had Josh Weissman on yet?
No, sir.
Yeah, you should definitely have Josh on. I've learned so much from him as far as like how I've approached just like hiring and how I work with the staff at my organization and realizing my own shortcomings. And he's just been really, really amazing. And I couldn't think of a better person to kind of have in my back pocket as I work to build this business and hopefully make change in the industry. So I'd recommend Josh.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinarynnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.